everybody, my name is Lega Bumba. Today we're going to be talking about credits. So in the United States, especially when you go to the United States and especially when you're a person that lives there, it's undeniable that you will probably have what's called as a credit card. So you probably have heard the phrase credit card before, way more than the phrase debit card. So what is credit card? Credit card is a card where basically it would be like the card that you use to borrow money. So you usually would not have money in that card really frequently, and you would kind of like borrow it from like the debt. So basically from a bank or basically from a chain of banks, things like that you are applying your credit card at. So that's who you're taking money from. So first, let's look at some of the important characteristics of credit card and credit that every credit card user should be able to know to avoid bankruptcy. First is creditness and scores. This is the score that's used to evaluate whether or not are you reliable, whether or not are you going to be somebody that's going to pay the money well, whether or not will you have the ability to pay, and whether or not should the lender let you have the money. So it would be a score ranging from 300 scores, which is the very absolute worst, to 850, which is the absolute best, which means that you're flawless, you did nothing wrong with your credit history. And so what is the range of a good score? If you want to have a good credit score, then your credit score must be about, it must be equal or bigger than 720 for it to be a good credit score. So that is it. And so why do you want to have a good credit score? Because first, if you have a higher credit score, then the chances that your money that you borrow could be giving to you is way much more higher, and you could also have more benefits. You could get less interest rates, you could get less fees, and they wouldn't really like rush you to pay the debts that much. Secondly is creditors, or which we sometimes call as the lender, would lend the debtor, which is the person that borrowed, the borrower, money, and then the borrower would need to pay that in the estimated amount of time. And so usually when there's any lending, when there's any borrowing, then there must be a repayment schedule, which is, okay, you have to pay on that exact day of the year. You have to pay on that exact time of the day. Moving on is it involves interest and fees. So for example, they could take you like 2% interest for every month. So for example, you borrow $100, right? And I take you like a 2% interest. So that means if you do not pay for this month, the next month you have to pay me 2% of $100, which is you have to pay $102, things like that. Yeah, and as you grow more, the more that you have to pay, just like that. And fees could be like the fees of transitioning between banks to banks, between accounts to accounts, and that's something that's almost undeniable. Moving on is what we call as a credit report. This part is very important, and it reflects on your social security number, your social ID number, your identity, everything. And it shows how you pay, how much do you borrow, how much do you pay, how much do you increase, how do you increase your credit points, things like that. It's basically the whole statement of how your money flows, how your money flows in, how your money flows out, and how do you manage them. And so what's so important is that creditors will look at this credit report and be able to predict out your creditness scores and be able to give you the amount of money in their suitable manner. And lastly, it's very important to keep your debt to limit ratio to only 30%. So for example, your credit could be the limit of like $100,000. So you should just kind of like took from your credit card for, let's say, about $30,000. And then when it overcomes that point, then you should be actually starting to like repay the creditor before you actually go way worse. Because as I've said, there's what we call as interest rate, there's what we call as fees, You do not just pay the exact amount of money that you borrow. So you just gotta have to like cut expenses, and you just gotta have to think smartly before you do anything. So today we talk about credit cards. Credit card is a very, very important development in the America and in the United States overall. And it's very important for you to be able to understand how credit card works, to be able to control your own credit card, and to be able to control your own personal finance. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.